President Vladimir Putin has ordered troops into 2 breakaway regions of Ukraine. This after officially recognizing Luhansk and Donetsk's independence, escalating tensions with the West. Putin claims the Russian forces would act in a, quote, peacekeeping role. This threatens war in Europe. Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky says these actions breach Kyiv's sovereignty. Joining me right now is Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst General Jack Keane. General, it's such a pleasure to talk with you, and so perfect to have you this morning. We so appreciate your time. Assess what has happened here with Putin sending troops into these 2 breakaway regions. How do you see it?
Well, first of all, I think when you take the Putin speech, the national security meeting that he held, the letter that he wrote, or the memo that he wrote back in July of 21, you can really see what his vision is. I mean, he really wants to strategically reconstruct the post-Cold War boundaries of Europe and also put in place a different security architecture that certainly favors Russia. He sees, when the Soviet Union collapsed, that the United States led expansion into Eastern Europe at the expense of Russia. And because of the weakness of the United States now, and also he believes the weakness of European leaders, there's an opportunity here for retrenchment and readjustment. So what is happening here with Ukraine, certainly, and beginning with declaring these 2 regions independent, he has put troops on the ground in there to enforce it. I think it's absolutely misguided for the administration to not see it for what it is. They seem to be paralyzed by the fact, is this an invasion or not? We have troops enforcing the autonomy rule that Putin has declared by decree, and those 2 regions are now affiliated with Russia, much as he did with Crimea. And we should have not hit the people in the region, which is what the sanctions are about, Maria, that the United States is imposing. We should have hit Russia. They're the aggressor here in doing this. Hopefully, after the administration has had an opportunity to get some sleep, and they wake up this morning, put their big boy pants on, and get after this the way it should be in dealing with Russia, who is the aggressor here. And that's where we need to be. I also believe that this is a phase. We're going to see it in terms of military operations. This is phase 1. Yeah. Troops in the occupied territories, bring more troops in there, and then expand throughout the Donbass region. The Ukrainians will resist that, and that will likely have to have pre-assault fires to assist the ground forces with air power, missiles, rocket and long-range artillery in support of that. And then another phase will be the expansion further into eastern Ukraine, and then also likely at some point the desire to topple the government of Kyiv. Whether he actually occupies it or not remains to be seen. Putin has a lot of options here. So I think a number of phases are going to unfold in front of us over the next several days.
So it feels like others are reacting. We're waiting for the White House to announce additional sanctions in response to Putin's actions. Germany this morning has halted the Nord Stream 2 pipeline certification. That's a really important point. And yet, over the weekend, Mario Draghi, the Prime Minister of Italy, said that the U.S. should not hit any sanctions and hit Russia's energy industry, which is really incredible that he could say that. Isn't that one of our only pieces of leverage here? What is the leverage, I want to ask you? What should the U.S. be issuing in terms of sanctions? Because there are 8 of Russia's largest companies that are already sanctioned by the United States for the 2014 invasion of Crimea. 4 of those companies are on the Commerce Department's entity list, and they're still held in investment accounts, right? I mean, they're still in indexes. Is that a leverage point? Because Tom Cotton was with me on Sunday going through some of the options that this administration has, and yet we haven't heard a peep about any sanctions. Here's Tom Cotton from Sunday. I want to get your reaction to this. Watch.
It's obvious the kind of sanctions we should impose. We should sanction Russian oil. We should sanction their minerals and their mining sector. We should sanction their biggest banks. We should impose secondary dollar sanctions on them as well. We should remove them from the international financial system. That would send a signal to China that we mean business and that there will be severe consequences if they attempt in Taiwan in the months or years ahead what Vladimir Putin is on the verge of doing in Ukraine.
So what do you think, General? What will happen now? What will be the U.S.'s move?
Well, I'm not certain the administration has ever come to grips with what the purpose of sanctions are. They look at sanctions as something to use to deter Russia from doing something. And I'm not suggesting that that doesn't have meaning. Of course it does. But sanctions also demonstrate to the world and to your adversary that you're dealing with how significant you believe their actions are. And therefore, this is serious. And the scale of the sanctions is important to demonstrate that seriousness, not just to the country, but internationally. And then there's also retribution and punishment for the actions that the country is taking. It's not just about deterrence. And yes, we can come up with a tough shopping list of what to do, as Senator Cotton there has done, and I certainly agree with most all of what that is. The United States has never laid out what its sanction regime is going to be against Russia, something I think we should have advertised and certainly have gotten very specific with them in our discussions. Listen, there's no sanctions right now that are going to deter Russia from what their vision and plans are for Ukraine. But they can demonstrate how we object to what that action is by the scale of it, and certainly we can punish them for this action, and that's the road we should be moving down, and we should be soliciting our allies to come with us. But we got to recognize here, Maria, this is not just about Ukraine. This is about Putin's vision when it comes to Europe's security and where the boundaries should be and the pressure points. And he really wants to see NATO retrench. And he's going to put pressure in months and years to come on NATO countries. Anybody that thinks this is over as he pulls Ukraine into its orbit and Belarus into its orbit is sadly mistaken. This is the beginning of more pressure that Putin is going to apply to readdress the security architecture in Europe at the expense of the United States and NATO.
Well, it's a little late to say we're going to deter Putin. He's just sent troops into two separatist regions of Ukraine. So to call sanctions a deterrent at this point out of this White House, I don't know. We watch what happened. We're watching what's happening. But, General, all of a sudden, all at once, we've got all of our adversaries on the march here. And the U.S. is pretty much nearing a new deal with Iran to get the United States back into an Iran nuclear deal. That, too, right now. Yeah,
we're going to see a new deal here pretty soon in a few days or a few weeks at best that is worse than the 2015 deal from all the indications that we have. And the problem we have with this and why so many of us are concerned, it's when we give them sanction relief, and we're also going to likely remove the IRGC from a terrorist list, part of the organization that Qasem Soleimani used to lead, the Quds Force. And when we give them that, the hundreds of billions of dollars in exchange for sanction relief, what are they going to do with that money? We already know what they did with it in 2015, much the same. They're going to use that money to buy rockets and missiles for Hamas and Hezbollah to rain on Israel, fuel the civil war in Syria, rockets and missiles for the Houthis to rain down on the Emirates and also on Saudi Arabia, destabilize the Middle East to their favor. That is what's going to happen. That has always been the concern. And also, they're going to use the money to build more ballistic missiles. And now there's an open door for them to acquire conventional weapon systems, and they're going to do that because they'll have the money to do it. The threat will grow. And they're so singularly focused on the nuclear threat and not taking into consideration the whole, which has been the problem with the nuclear deal from the outset, going back to 2015.
Yes, and you've said that many times. We are in dangerous waters for sure. General, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for navigating all of this with us. We appreciate your time.